Seeing as how this channel is called the Six Machine and the number of Slaanesh is 6, this is kind of fitting I suppose. We are very close to the full release of the new Emperor's Children Codex. It goes up for pre-order this weekend, and in this video we are going to take a look at the new Demon focused detachment. And you Demon players out there can be slightly grateful in a way, because whilst this detachment isn't particularly great, I don't think, there is some good news as a silver lining in that it doesn't seem GW is throwing out the Demon Codex, at least not yet. So the detachment for the Emperor's Children, which focuses on your demons, is the Carnival of Excess, but before we dive into that we should probably discuss the army rule, which was shown off in an article the other day, and the Emperor's Children army rule is Thrill Seekers. And this very simply lets your units with the Emperor's Children keyword both shoot and charge even after they've advanced or fallen back. Now there are some caveats to this in that you can't recharge into a unit that you were in engagement range of, so there's no cycle charging with this, and you also cannot charge a unit that has already had a charge attempted, successful or not, this phase. So essentially each unit of your army can advance and charge, but they have to go into separate units. And I actually really like this. I think it's a really unique army rule. It's quite fluffy as well, in that the followers of Slaanesh each want to be seeking their own glory and victories, so they won't be charging into a unit that's already got someone charged into them. So I do quite like it as a rule, I have to say. I think it's got a lot of potential on a lot of your units, and can at the very least get you a couple of very reliable early game charges. The bad news about it though is that you need the Emperor's Children keyword to use it. And guess what? Your demons don't get that faction keyword. Instead, their faction keyword is the Legions of Excess. So none of your demons can do this. Essentially, the demon part of your army gets no army rule, which really sucks. But to try and make up for this, the detachment focused around the demons brings a rule to try and make things a bit better. The Demonic Empowerment rule essentially rewards you for doubling up and working your mortal and your demon forces together in concert. So what you can do is you can bring up to half your army size as demon models in this detachment. So 500 points in an incursion game, 1000 points in a strike force game, for instance. It does say they can't be your warlord. Your warlord does still need to be that mortal character to lead your mortal forces with the Emperor's Children keyword. But what it does mean essentially is that you can bring a good chunk of demons into the mix, and then when you do that, the detachment rule of Demonic Empowerment means that when an Emperor's Children keyword unit is within 6 inches of a Legions of Excess keyword unit, they are empowered, and the same goes the other way round. So essentially, a unit of Infractors next to a unit of Demonettes, both of them will be empowered. And being empowered grants the unit sustained hits 1, and if their weapons already had that rule, they instead get to crit on a 5+. Basically, having a pair of units, one demon, one mortal, moving around the board together gets you a significant boost in both your ranged and your melee output. And it really does incentivize you to play the two halves of your army very closely together to keep as much of your force empowered as possible, and granting things like flawless blades and some fiends sustained hits can make them absolutely terrifying into a lot of targets with a load of 2 and 3 damage going into them with some fairly good armor penetration. One of the big downsides, I think, is that obviously you don't get the advance and charge on your demon units because that's your army rule, and that can mean in some cases you do have to plan it carefully in case you accidentally charge up a Emperor's Children unit and move outside that 6-inch bubble to keep yourself empowered. So whilst your demon units, yes, they are generally plenty fast enough to keep up, they can risk being left behind from the sheer speed of your Emperor's Children units thanks to that army rule. So you do have to watch out for that a little bit. I would say in general, it's a fairly good detachment rule. I'm just not sure it is enough to commit almost fully half of your army in some cases to essentially losing an army rule to make up for it. The second downside of this demon focused detachment is that you don't actually get all of the Slaanesh demons. The Codex only lets you pick a certain few, and this can be seen as a silver lining, as I said earlier, because it seems that the Demon Codex is going to be here to stay, because they're not bringing across all of the Slaanesh demon units into this book. There are still some that aren't being used, so presumably they will be in an eventual Demon Codex. And they did say in the article as well that this is going to be similar to the other Legion Codexes, so things like the Death Guard and the World Eaters, they're going to have a smattering of demon units added in. But I do think that for at least 10th edition, there is going to be a standalone Demon Codex, which will have all of the demon units in it. As we go into 11th edition, who knows what's going to happen, but certainly I think for 10th edition, there is going to be a few demon units in the World Eaters, Death Guard, Thousand Sons, Emperor's Children codexes, and there will be a second independent demon codex where all of the demons are gathered together. So for the Emperor's Children, you can bring Shalaxi Hellbane, a Keeper of Secrets, Demonettes, Fiends, and Seekers in your lists. So you can't bring any of the Chariots, you can't bring the Infernal Enrapturus, no Celeste, and you can't take the Mask either. So there is quite a bit you can't take. It does feel rather restrictive to me, and I think whether it's more good news or bad news finding this out kind of depends on whether you're a demon player or not. As a mainly Khorne demon player, I don't mind this. I was, to be honest, quite excited to pick up the World Eaters if all the demons were being folded into it, but now that I feel like that's not going to happen because they're not all going to be folded into it, I'll probably just stick with the main Demon Codex when that does eventually release, and I'll just pick up World Eaters maybe in 11th edition. I'm glad that I'm not being forced into getting the World Eaters Codex to get all of my demon units in it. You also get a selection of stratagems and enhancements. Annoyingly, the enhancements are very much focused on your Emperor's Children models. So the first up is Empiric Suffusion. And just to clarify here, we've got codex points for these from some of the things that have been released on Reddit. Obviously, they are going to change almost immediately. They are almost certainly not correct. But for now, from what we can see, this one is going to cost you 10 points, and it goes on an Emperor's Children model, and once per battle round, they can target a friendly Slaanesh unit with Heroic Intervention for 0 command points. Basically, it's a free Heroic Intervention each battle round, which isn't bad for just 10 points, and it can impact demons as well, as they do have the Slaanesh keyword, so being able to dip Shalaxi or a Keeper into combat for free can be a really nasty surprise to play on the enemy. Dark Blessings is given to an infantry model only, and this one, for 15 points, gives you a once per battle ability where they can give themselves a 3-up invulnerable save for the phase. So if you've got some really scary melee attacks coming into your Warlord, for instance, they can use this to perhaps keep them alive for that one more round of combat. It's not bad for 15 points getting yourself a 3-up invuln, but it is very limiting, being only one use, and also being infantry character only means that you can't use this to get a great save on something like a Demon Prince, unfortunately. Next up we have the Possessed Blade. This is a pricier 25 points. This one lets you pick one of the bearer's melee weapons at the start of the battle, and they get +1 attack on that weapon. They also get to give the weapon +1 damage whenever they fight if they choose to, and if they do choose to, they also get Devastating Wounds and Hazardous on that weapon. So if you are willing to risk the Hazardous Wounds, you could in theory get a Demon Prince with 7 attacks on their Hellforged weapons at 4 damage each and Devastating Wounds, which is really good and definitely worth that Hazardous roll. I think they can do a huge amount of damage with 4 damage weaponry and the potential to do mortal wounds on a 6 to wound. Warp Walker is the priciest enhancement at 30 points. This one goes on an Emperor's Children model or on a Keeper of Secrets. So this is the one enhancement you can put onto a demon. And when you use this, you get to add a flat 6 inches to the movement of the bearer's unit when they advance instead of rolling for it. And on top of that, they also get to move through enemy models. So you can get past enemy screens so easily with this. And whilst you can't end your move in engagement range, you can still just jump up the board, bypass the screen, and then potentially get a charge off as well. It is incredibly powerful, and it's going to make, again, things like your Demon Princes, the one with wings, a huge threat between a 14-inch move, a flat 6-inch advance, and then still be able to charge. So essentially they can move up 20 inches up the board, get past any screens, and then still charge into a juicy target behind them. The list of 6 stratagems has also been revealed to us, and Sustained by Agony is up first, being 1 command point, and just after an Emperor's Children unit from your army destroys an enemy unit in the fight phase, you can do this, and a Legions of Excess unit within 6 inches of your unit gets back 3 wounds, or up to D3 plus 3 destroyed demonettes. So this is just a fantastic way to heal up a Keeper of Secrets or get up to 6 demonettes back, which is very, very strong. Now the one downside to it is that it does rely on you destroying an enemy unit, not just killing off a few models. So it can be a bit tricky to get off sometimes, but this can massively boost your durability on some of your squishier demon units. Sycophantic Surge is also 1 command point. This is in the charge phase. You can charge even after advancing or falling back, but only if the target of your charge is within engagement range of an Emperor's Children unit. So this essentially unlocks your army rule for your demons, so you can use this quite nicely to advance and charge an Emperor's Children unit in with your army rule, and then you follow it up with a demon unit following in behind them. So it can help you to keep that 6-inch range in check as well for your sustained hits from the detachment rule. So it is very nice being able to get advance and charge on a demon unit on something like a Keeper of Secrets is very strong. But I do think at the same time, paying a command point for essentially unlocking your army rule is definitely a little bit annoying. Ecstatic Slaughter is up next. This one is also a fight phase ability. This is done after a Legions of Excess unit destroys an enemy, so it's kind of a reverse of Sustained by Agony, but in this one you get to pick an Emperor's Children unit within 6 inches of your demon unit, and they can declare a charge. So if you have a unit nearby, an Emperor's Children unit nearby that didn't charge in, they can potentially get into a combat, or if they've already been in a fight and destroyed an enemy unit and then are just standing around in the middle of nowhere, they can potentially charge again to tie up another enemy unit. It does state that they can't fight again, but you can potentially combo this quite nicely. If the Emperor's Children unit fights first and destroys a unit, you can then heal some wounds back on your demon unit nearby with Sustained by Agony. Then you can fight with the demon unit, and if they kill an enemy unit, then you can use this and let your Emperor's Children unit then make a second charge. So you can, in best case scenario, destroy 2 enemy units and tie up a third in a single phase with just 2 of your units. So it can be really good and sneaky. The obvious downside to doing that is that if you've charged in and you have already fought so you can't fight again, you are essentially just giving your opponent a free round of combat. But I do think it can be really good a lot of the time. It can be great for some mobility tricks to tie up an enemy unit that wasn't expecting to be in combat, or if your unit failed a charge. I could be wrong here, there may be something in the main rules that doesn't let you, but from reading this, if you failed a charge in the charge phase, and then in the following combat phase, your demon unit within 6 inches destroyed an enemy unit, this potentially lets you try that charge again. So you could potentially get your Emperor's Children unit into combat even after the charge phase finishes. If I'm wrong about that, and there is something in the core rules about not being able to reattempt a charge if you failed one, do let me know because I could be wrong. But either way, you can get an Emperor's Children unit a sneaky extra charge with this stratagem, which is really useful to have. Uncanny Reactions is a very simple defensive strat. In the enemy shooting phase, you can put this on a Slanesh unit, so it's a mortal or a demon unit, and they're at -1 to hit for the phase. So just a really nice, easy trick to keep some of your models alive a bit better as you are making your way up the board and getting ready to charge in. The last 2 stratagems are both 2 command points, so there is some fairly hefty command point requirements in this detachment. But first up is Violent Crescendo. This is in the fight phase on any Slanesh beast, infantry or mounted unit, so anything from demonettes to terminators to your fiends. They can pile in or consolidate 6 inches rather than 3 inches. So it's that always brilliant trick to get some extra movement and either use this to tie up another enemy unit in melee or get yourself onto an objective which is just over 3 inches away. So it's a very solid, if pricey stratagem, but one that really will help you win games, so you will be using it quite a lot. The last one is Dark Apparitions. We've seen this style of stratagem a lot before. It's another favourite of mine, which is uppy downy shenanigans. At the end of the opponent's fight phase, a unit of demonettes, so it's only demonettes you can do this on, they can be targeted with this and they get put into strategic reserves, ready to come back in your following movement phase. But the unique thing about this one, and part of the reason it costs 2 command points, is that they come in via Deep Strike, so they can be anywhere on the board, but they have to be wholly within 9 inches of an Emperor's Children unit, and only 6 inches away from enemies. And there is no restriction in this about not being able to charge. So a really nasty potential 6-inch charge in this detachment, and if you manage to get both your Demonette and your Emperor's Children unit charging in, then of course that will get them close together and unlock those sweet sustained hits. So yes, this one is pricey, but it's really, really good. And whilst Demonettes aren't super killy, with sustained hits, they can do a lot of work. You're looking at up to 30 attacks at strength 4 with -1 AP and fights first base before you even get to any sustained hits, so they can do quite a lot of work just through sheer volume. And they also, I've just remembered, get +1 to charge rolls with their instruments, so it's a potential 5-inch charge out of Deep Strike, not 6. So it's super reliable, and it does make them a very scary threat to anything squishy, whether that be enemy screens or enemy chaff that may be standing in your way. So I mean, overall, it's a detachment that is fun because, hey, you can add demons in, but it seems to me that you do give up a lot. You basically give up an army rule on up to half your units, and whilst I think the detachment rule is good in terms of that demonic empowerment rule, it does bring a lot to you, I'm not sure it's enough to warrant, unless you really want to bring some Demonettes or a Keeper of Secrets and get them those buffs. I just do think the other detachments do more for an Emperor's Children army. It's not to say I don't like it as an option. I'm glad that they put an option in for a demon detachment. I almost just wish they'd gone a bit more all in with it. They've kind of half-assed it, I think. And whilst I also like the fact that this kind of clarifies that the Demon Codex isn't being squatted just yet, it just feels like they've kind of tried to reach a halfway point, which is fine for now, but it just doesn't really work either way. Like if they're going to go all in, either having the Demon Codexes be wholly separate or just filter them all into the Emperor's Children Codex or the World Eaters Codex, just go all in. Do a couple of detachments that are very demon focused and demon heavy that really benefit them, and let the players of the Emperor's Children or the World Eaters or whatever bring every demon model, and then you don't need a demon codex. You know, I mean, I get a lot of people aren't going to like that, myself included, because I love having the standalone demon codex. But if that is going to happen eventually, I'd rather they just tore the band-aid off and did it all now. I also don't like that the enhancements are so restrictive apart from Warp Walker. Like if you've got a demon heavy detachment, make it so that the enhancements at least can be taken by things like your Keeper of Secrets, or have another demon HQ. I can't remember the name of the generic demon on foot hero or HQ, whatever. But why couldn't we bring that in either? It just seems that they haven't gone all in. They've been in this little halfway point that to me doesn't work for anyone. So I mean, it's okay. I don't think it's awful. The option is there, and more options is never really a bad thing, I guess. I just wish they had put a bit more thought into it. But I'd love to know what you guys think about this detachment and how you think it holds up compared to the other Emperor's Children detachments that we've seen. I'd also really like to know your thoughts about the option of demon units we can bring here. Is it too restrictive? Would you have preferred that they brought all of them across so you could bring anything Slaanesh Demon in this book? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.